Look at this structure. For decades, the default model for religious life has been the monolith, massive buildings designed to gather passive crowds. When we strip that away, we are left with the reality of the modern mind, a single, isolated node. This node exists under intense pressure. We are bombarded daily by a cultural operating system running on fear, news cycles and social algorithms that use anxiety as their primary operational fuel. Maintaining a peaceful, spiritually aligned love OS in total isolation is difficult. Against these constant cultural headwinds, an individual's internal resolve often flickers out. The standard solution has been to scale up. Modern institutions counter individual loneliness by gathering thousands of people inside large auditoriums for highly produced weekly events. However, mass gatherings rarely generate deep relational transformation. The sheer scale of the crowd provides anonymity, which protects the ego and prevents the vulnerability required for a genuine change in character. Historically, the word Ekklesia described something else. It wasn't a building, but a called-out assembly, a dynamic living room network of 10 to 30 people sharing their lives with radical honesty. Spiritual survival depends on an architectural shift. It requires moving away from the sociology of the crowd and toward a very specific, intimate network designed for high-energy connection. Prayer and the Ekklesia operate as a precise spiritual technology. To understand how this technology functions, we can examine it through the lens of 20th century quantum mechanics and systems engineering. This architecture functions across 3 distinct layers. At the top is Layer 1, the individual node. Below that sits Layer 2, the fusion reactor, a small, synchronized ring of 4 to 8 nodes. Beneath it all is Layer 3, the universal grid. This approach uses physics as a wondrous metaphor. We are using these scientific discoveries as a vocabulary to help us visualize invisible spiritual structures. When spiritual communities feel hollow, it is often because they have violated the fundamental design of how human consciousness and connection are meant to operate. At Layer 1, we find the individual. Quantum mechanics, specifically the double-slit experiment, shows that a particle exists as a wave of infinite probability until it is observed. The act of observation causes that wave to collapse into a solid physical particle. This is the core of the Copenhagen interpretation, famously championed by Niels Bohr. Bohr's work suggests that the universe does not present a fixed reality independent of the observer. Instead, the observer's focused attention forces a world of infinite potential to lock into a single concrete state. This observer effect maps directly to the mechanics of prayer. In petitionary prayer, an individual often focuses on what they lack: money, health, or companionship. By focusing on the deficit, they are actively observing lack, which collapses their reality into a continuous state of want. Resonance prayer reverses this focus. The individual tunes their consciousness to observe the divine abundance and peace already present within them. By observing this fullness, they allow that specific reality to collapse into their physical experience. This aligns with the ancient instruction in Mark 11:24, commanding believers to pray from the conviction that they have already received what they ask for. It is prayer from a state of completed reality. We track this resonance through neuroscience. Dr. Andrew Newberg's brain scans of people in deep prayer show high frontal lobe activity, representing intense focus, and a total drop in parietal lobe activity. This represents a loss of the ego boundary. Prayer, in this sense, provides the structural alignment needed to collapse spiritual possibility into physical reality. By dropping the ego boundary, the individual allows their internal resonance to shape their external world. This leads us to Layer 2. What happens when multiple individual nodes interact within the same space? In physics, reaching a critical threshold causes particles to undergo a phase transition, functioning as a single unified entity. In superconductivity, when resistance drops to 0, electrons move in perfect unison, creating a massive energy surplus. The group's output becomes greater than its parts. This mirrors the biblical theology of 2 or 3 gathering. When individuals synchronize their intent, they generate a dimension of spiritual energy that is impossible to achieve alone. Achieving this superconductive state requires 0 spiritual resistance. This only happens through radical vulnerability and honesty. Any social performance or religious mask acts as resistance, instantly breaking the fusion. The architecture requires a strict limit, 4 to 8 people. This allows deep sharing within an hour. But once a group exceeds 20 people, fusion conditions vanish. The thermal noise of anonymity returns, shattering the connection and reverting nodes to disconnected, low-energy pulses. The power of the Ekklesia relies entirely on the strict boundaries of its microarchitecture. It is a technology that cannot scale without being destroyed. How does the energy from this small fusion reactor influence the external world? Our surface reality of separated objects is merely an explicate order. Beneath it, our platforms are tethered to a deeper, glowing grid. This concept was developed by David Bohm, a colleague of Einstein and one of the 20th century's most original quantum theorists. Bohm proposed an implicate order, a deeper dimension where mind and matter are seamlessly folded together. Here, everything in the universe shares a common root. Psychologist Carl Jung, working with physicist Wolfgang Pauli, explored how our minds interact with this deep grid. Jung coined the term synchronicity to describe deeply meaningful coincidences that bridge our inner consciousness and external physical events. Believers experience this as providence, the right person appearing, or a specific path opening at the exact moment of need. These are signs that our internal state is echoing through the implicate order. The Ekklesia provides a localized gateway to this order. By achieving zero resistance in a small group, members harmonize with the universe's hidden depth. It is important to remember that quantum mechanics is not a mathematical proof for God. Faith remains a spiritual commitment. We also reject the use of these concepts for ego-driven mysticism. Quantum laws are not a tool for magically manipulating the world for personal gain. These frameworks function as modern translators. They allow us to describe ancient spiritual realities using the most precise language available today. Romans 1:20 reminds us that the Creator's invisible nature is revealed through what He has made. The laws of physics naturally reflect their underlying design. The individual node resonates, the fusion reactor achieves zero resistance, and the deep grid responds. This is the architecture of the Ekklesia. We no longer must live as isolated nodes, drained by fear. We can actively build a small, honest Ekklesia and engage the architecture of resonance. It is important to remember that quantum mechanics is not a mathematical proof for God. Faith remains a spiritual commitment. We also reject the use of these concepts for ego-driven mysticism. Quantum laws are not a tool for magically manipulating the world for personal gain. These frameworks function as modern translators. They allow us to describe ancient spiritual realities using the most precise language available today. Romans 1:20 reminds us that the Creator's invisible nature is revealed through the things He has made. The laws of physics naturally reflect their underlying design. The individual node resonates, the fusion reactor achieves zero resistance, and the deep grid responds. This is the architecture of the Ekklesia. We no longer have to live as isolated nodes drained by fear. We can build a radically honest Ekklesia and engage the